Welcome to the We Hack Purple podcast, where each week we meet a new and extremely interesting guest who is a member of the information security industry. This week we have Magda Chelly, my friend of many years, and also a PhD, a CISO, and the head of cyber risk consulting at Marsh Singapore. This week also something exciting happened. Our sponsor for this episode, ThreadFix, which is powered by Denim Group, got acquired! Oh my gosh, congratulations to all of our friends at ThreadFix and Denim Group. We are so happy for you here at We Hack Purple. We had a little happy dance for you, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You deserve every success you have. But without further ado, I want to talk to Magda, don't you? Let's bring her out.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon. It's morning for me, but it's afternoon for you, Tanya. I'm so excited to be here. It's fantastic.
I'm really happy to have you here. I haven't seen you, got to see your gorgeous smiling face in months. Months it has been, maybe even over a year. We haven't had a Zoom call in a really long time since maybe this winter, and you look fantastic.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Yeah, well, I can't even say when it was because, in Singapore, the weather is most of the time the same. So I don't even know if it's winter, summer, or spring. It all looks the same.
Oh my gosh, the weather in Singapore, so for people listening who haven't been to Singapore, basically Magda gets to live in paradise. It's amazing. It's beautiful. The last time I was there, she took me to this restaurant. We had the most amazing food with all these amazing women. It was incredible. So she gets to live in paradise. I live in Canada's version of paradise, Vancouver Island. We still have to have winter though, because it's Canada.
Yeah, that's true. I was about to say, the weather is for sure slightly different. Do you get minus 30 degrees, right? Celsius in winter, something like that?
So we are way different than the rest of Canada, but we do still get some snow. So we don't get super cold like Ottawa, where I'm from, but it's still, we still get snow. So it's nothing like Singapore, but I mean, we can aspire. But I'm not supposed to talk about the weather. I'm not supposed to talk about how you live in paradise. I was wondering if you could also I forgot. So I'm Tanya, Janca. I'm your host. Apparently I keep forgetting to introduce myself. I'm the host. No one cares. Everyone wants to know the guest, but could you please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and about your amazing long title?
Sure. Thank you so much, Tanya. So I am Magda Chelly. I'm based in Singapore, currently leading the cyber advisory for Marsh Asia, the whole region. So from my background, and I think very quickly I would like to bring that up, I come from a very diverse background. I have origins from Poland and origins from North Africa, Tunisia in particular. I lived in 5 different countries before settling in Singapore, which is my home now and a lovely place to be, like Tanya said, paradise. So I'm really happy to have had this opportunity. In terms of education, I have a PhD in telecommunication engineering that I have obtained long time ago. And this has been followed by afterwards, specializing myself in cybersecurity. I have had all type of roles and jobs across Tunisia, France, Qatar, and other countries, and landing here in Singapore, as I mentioned. So it has been very, very various journey, very interesting one. I had to learn a lot and also evolve as a professional and as a person in general during my journey. So this is the quick overview, Tanya, of my profile and what I have done.
Seriously, I know you did way more than that. But anyway, so you're an SCISO. Could you explain what an SCISO is? And then after maybe explain what let's start with SCISO. What does that stand for?
Well, first of all, just to clarify on the certifications and my specialization in cybersecurity. So I started with, as I mentioned, telecommunication engineering. And telecommunication engineering includes basically as well everything that is programming, general information security. So it was really a fascinating journey around migrating and adopting cybersecurity in my career. Now, when it comes to the CISO in particular, with a certification that is not very known, it's actually a Certified Information Security Officer that comes from the SECO Institute, SECO, and it basically is more of in management, information security management certification that helps to achieve a little bit more business focus and risk rather than just, technical cybersecurity.
I think I was thinking of VCISO, virtual CISO, because you have done that role, right?
Absolutely, I have done that. And I think one, passion of mine is to help businesses understand their cyber risk. And because of the different roles that I have had in my career, I found myself really good at that. And of course, I ended up being a virtual CISO for various companies and advising them on their cybersecurity strategy, roadmap, how to address it in an efficient and cost-effective manner. Because obviously, we can't imagine a company reaching 100% security. And a lot of time, that was as well a topic that was very interesting, like how to ensure that the company understands that, but at the same time, builds the right capabilities. So with my VCISO experience, I was in my previous life, and now I'm actually just advising more the CISOs or the business stakeholders in the companies. It has been very valuable for me because that experience in particular help you to see so many different maturities, so many different ways of deploying cybersecurity, working through it, understanding it, or even addressing cyber risk as a whole.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so like I actually really want to talk about cyber risk because so we've had 40, I think you're episode number 40, which is kind of awesome. And we haven't had anyone that's talked about risk yet. So could you tell them, or could you tell our audience, or tell me what cyber risk is, and then maybe why it matters?
Yeah, Tanya, it's a great topic, because when you discuss with a company and when you discuss the topic of cybersecurity with business stakeholders, if you start bringing terms that are technical jargons, or rather bringing risk as a threat. So, for example, you won't go to a CTO or CEO of a company and tell them, oh, ransomware is your risk, because they don't understand what are the consequences and what is the danger or harm to the company if that happens and materialize. So basically, by addressing cyber risk or talking about it, every time you need to link it to the matters of the company, to what really is important for the company and the business risks, then you define of how this cyber risk can materialize. So within our community in particular, very often there is this kind of really focus on the technical aspect of cybersecurity. Well, not everyone is a cybersecurity professional, right? And not everyone understands technical jargon or even cyber threats. So really, really important to simplify that, have a message that is clear, and never assume that someone else knows even basic fundamental concepts. Like I'm diverting a little bit from the cyber risk, but just to give an example, when we run a lot of cyber awareness, commonly, you say phishing, but when I actually realized that a lot of people don't even know what does phishing mean, even today, and this applies in different regions. So coming back to cyber risk, it's extremely important when discussing with business stakeholders not to focus on the technical jargon, but simplify and link it to the business and the business risks as such. The other aspect that is also extremely interesting, and I think this is really a passion of mine. Like I've gone full research into the topic, and it's something that is very, very interesting is cyber risk quantification. You know, we do cyber risk assessment and everyone talks about it in a traditional way. You define your risk high, medium, low, or with certain colors. But that doesn't allow an objective visibility and understanding on the financial losses following a cyber attack for a company. So quantification will help to ensure or calculate the financial losses following a cyber attack. And that will include costs like, the business loss of profitability, market share loss, employees over time. So it's fascinating on how many methods are there. And one of the very well-known frameworks in cyber risk quantification is FAIR. But FAIR is still complex and it hasn't been used, so often with them organizations. So I definitely encourage anyone who is listening to us today to read about it and try to understand how beneficial it is to quantify the cyber risk. And I want to also mention that this is extremely helpful for information security professionals because they can basically get the additional budget that they're searching for. It's a great way to go to the board and tell them, look, if this cyber attack happens, this is how much we're going to lose. And therefore, I need my budget to implement my security initiatives.
Oh, wow. Okay, there's so much. Okay, so I'm gonna come back and dive into those because I want to know more about cyber risk, and like I said before, it wasn't covered on the podcast before, but also I feel like when I first started in security, I remember I had a meeting and I was trying to explain to upper management. Basically, I was like, "The sky is falling. Why aren't you listening?" And they're just like, "The hell's wrong with her?" And then a bunch of them left, and my manager said to me, "Tanya, you can't say the sky is falling. You have to say this risk or whatever exists. Here's the potential business impact. Here's the likelihood of it happening. Here's how much it will cost to fix. And therefore our return on investment is blah, or the risk is reduced by this." He's like, if they're not listening to you and it really, really is important, it's because you're not communicating clearly. And so from then on I came with I practiced, I was ready. Do you feel like this is a thing that, well, you're probably really awesome at this, right? But do you agree, sometimes it's because InfoSec people aren't able to communicate clearly what risk is to business people?
Tanya, I think you brought up a very, very important topic. Communication is extremely important. But as well, again, when you are in information security, you know much more about the topic than other stakeholders. And therefore, again, you cannot assume that the business stakeholders will understand you. And of course, in the cybersecurity space, we would like and love to bring as much possible, the security of the company up. But we need to be as well realistic. A business is a business. Their main objective is to generate revenue, not to deploy all possible cybersecurity controls. So they need to balance their budget, their priorities with the protection of the business in the manner that makes sense. And one aspect that you brought, Tanya, about, having that visibility about the business impact, likelihood, and then defining the cost, which allows to understand as well what measures to implement with what cost range to ensure that is actually making sense to the business. Common sense again, but if it's not presented properly or in an adequate way, then we are unable actually to bring our message to business stakeholders, and they will not be focused on to implementing it.
Do you feel like, I don't know if you've ever had to do it the other way, where you've had to explain to the InfoSec people, listen, we're not going to spend $100,000 to protect something that costs $50,000. Do you have to reverse that sometimes?
This is a really a great topic, Tanya, and a question. So in my experience, I haven't had that particular, exact example. What I have seen often is basically a roadmap including a lot of security controls and a lot of services that are not aligned with the financial aspect of the controls implementations. Yes, it's very nice to have tools and controls across people and technology and process, but what about the associated cost? You can't just go again and ask the company to implement everything within the next few months. They might not have the resources, they might not have the budget, they might have other constraints that will interrupt the business activities and therefore they cannot do it. So the responsibility of the information security professional as well is to guide the company in a manner that makes sense again to the business, that helps them to minimize, mitigate the risks accordingly over a period of time and not just try to deploy everything at once because that's not possible. So how I do it very often is there is a particular quick wins that needs to be implemented in a short time as well. Those are the non-negotiable, for example, where the company just cannot operate like that. If not, that will lead to the materialization of a cyber risk that they cannot afford. And I'm very clear on they cannot afford. And then followed up by the other initiatives that are actually, again, separated in a roadmap in short, medium, and long term, allowing the company to have a pragmatic approach and a realistic implementation.
Nice. Seriously, I, when when I started in InfoSec, no one explained to me before what risk management was. I would be like, those are the people that asks me a lot of questions and usually tell me how I'm doing stuff wrong. That was my experience as a dev. And so then I moved over to security and I was like, well, I don't want to be those people. That was like my entire experience was just, you're doing it wrong. And I was like, okay. So I like your definition. I like it.
I think, sorry, Tanya,
No,
just
no,
to
no,
add
you.
on that, I think there is a lot of perception that risk assessment, and especially in the traditional way, it's very compliance focused and only list certain ways of doing it that, again, are perhaps lacking some link with the business or are not that just realistic, bringing that practical approach to the business. So I would say the best is to combine different approaches and really try to understand how that business organization operates. What are their priorities? What are their main liabilities? What are their main exposures? What are their main costs that might occur following a cyber attack? And that's not only within the technical environment. Like a very simple example that I like to bring as well. You know, in risk management, very often we use the single loss expectancy and annualized rate of occurrence. And then, here you have the examples online that if a building gets fired, then you lose, for example, the value of that building in a percentage. Now, if we look at cyber risk and a more holistic approach, the loss for a business won't be just the building. It will be the building, the data inside, the loss of business because the business might not have a hot site where everyone can go and work immediately. So there is a lot of very interesting aspects to consider when defining the impact for the business that, again, often in cybersecurity is not that holistic. We look at it from an IT information technology, from a cybersecurity perspective and lens, while we should look at the holistic view and discuss a little bit further with the CFO, with the business stakeholders, and understand where all the costs are involved.
Oh, wow. I want to ask the people who are listening and watching if they have questions for Magda. You can ask them in the chat. So we have a couple of people, and Kellen's been really awesome, saying like that's cool and awesome idea, and he has a new message that he just put up. Oh no, that's Nancy. So I see a lot of organizations moving to the FAIR methodology. Do you have a specific methodology that you like the best, or do you have like do you like the FAIR one, or I don't know. I don't know a lot about risk management, so please excuse me not knowing all the terms.
Yeah, Tanya, fear is pretty known. Now, when we say a lot of organizations are moving towards fear, that is something that is relative, for example, to one region or one particular country as well. It's important to understand that, for example, in Asia, if we go around and ask companies around implementing even risk quantification, we'll be very, very surprised by how low amount of company or low number of companies are considering cyber risk quantification. So the implementation of FAIR is still growing. Now, as a methodology, and this is purely my own, subjective opinion, I find the methodology really great. It brings all the important aspects when assessing or addressing cyber risk quantification. Now, I do find that someone who is not familiar with those concepts will have really challenges to implement it. And they need to specifically study that framework in very big details, eventually look at practical approach. What I think is very good methodology, which I apply a lot, especially when starting the journey for companies. So before they get into a sophisticated cyber risk assessment and quantification, is to start by scenario building. Build the scenario that makes sense for a business. And I give an example: business interruption due to a cyber attack, example, ransomware. And then go into further detail, try to understand the impact and the factors or cost factors associated following that attack. Try to analyze the likelihood from the perspective of how it can happen. For example, in my case, I use a lot of data streams to understand the likelihood. That includes the incident history of the company. That might include as well other data streams from Marsh, because Marsh is an insurance and broking and risk management company. So I get to leverage on data streams across various databases, and it helps to have a little bit further accuracy. But again, having that visibility of scenario, build your scenario, define and discuss with your business stakeholders to understand if that happens. And again, it's not a threat. I'm talking about the whole scenario and the business risk. Understand the all impacts to the business, the associated costs that might be first party, so direct on the business, and third parties, for example, liabilities, legal costs associated that might go into vendors, into other third parties. And then try to understand if there is any possibilities to evaluate the likelihood as much as possible. Now, I have seen many companies interested only in the impact quantification. They want to understand the cost if that cyber attack happens, not, the likelihood of it happening. Of course, this is related because we know that nowadays companies are victims of cyber attacks very often, right? So the companies know that, at least some of them. So because of that, they limit to the impact quantification, and they want to understand all those costs and factor costs that might be involved following a cyber attack. So I think Nancy's question is very, very interesting. And I have done a research that I will publish shortly around the different frameworks for cyber risk quantification. They are not only FAIR. FAIR is the most known. There are other that are very specific as well, for example, vulnerability management. And that's fascinating, how much you need to invest versus how much is the cost of that particular vulnerability that might lead to a cyber risk. Because in reality, I'm talking a lot, Tanya, so, you stop me if there's anything that...
Well, we have a question. We have a question when you're done that thought. We have another good question.
So in reality, what happens is that companies operate in complex environments where we have a lot of operational technology in some industry. We have legacy systems. And those legacy systems practically are very hard to, for example, update, to patch. So, and there's absolutely no way that, for example, in some critical infrastructure, the operation manager of that particular plant or power, for example, power plant will say, oh, let's stop the operations for a while, we're doing an update. That will not happen. In operational technology environments, safety and availabilities are the first very important pillars. And therefore, again, when talking about cyber risk, when talking about mitigating cyber risk, it is really critical to understand the reality and practicality of things and how companies are operating in real world. Because again, theoretically, that's the best practice, but is that possible to be applied for a certain industry, for a certain company? That is another question.
Okay, so first I want to thank our sponsor because that's a thing I have to do. And then I have a question in the chat, and then I have a question. So I want to thank our sponsor, ThreadFix. They got acquired this week. So they've been a startup and have exploded in all these amazing ways, making this amazing vulnerability management system. But I just want to say, Dan, Sheridan, all of you, I am so happy for you. The whole We Hack Purple team is so happy for you. And thank you so much for always being so supportive of our company. No one deserves better news than you. Thank you. Okay. So I'm like really happy for them. Anyway, okay, so now there is a question from, so there's a comment from Nancy. I'm really looking forward to reading your paper, Magda. And then there's a question from Kellen. How often do you revise these models? Or how often does industry revise these models? Like, it seems like a big deal and a lot of work to revise a model.
It's a fantastic question indeed. And I think if we look at the reality of cyber risk quantification, and my research actually showed that it's a pretty immature area. There's not many frameworks. There's a limited number of research as well done in this particular topic. So we're not even talking about updating the frameworks yet. We're just talking about actually bringing more ideas to the table around how to quantify best cyber risk. And again, I talked about likelihood. And one of the biggest challenge in cyber risk quantification is actually related to the likelihood of the cyber event happening. And that is as well an area of research that is not very much developed. Why? Because when we're talking about cyber risk quantification, we're talking about a mix or basically a collaboration between two industries, cybersecurity and economics. Now, how often do we see those two working together? Not very often, right? And therefore, again, if it comes to, having more innovative, updated models in cyber risk quantification, I believe we are not yet there, but there's a lot of new research that is coming up. Some of it that I am really, really heavily trying to encourage. A lot of as well companies like my company, Marsh and McLennan, is focusing on cyber risk quantification. That actually helps advance the research because there's a lot, again, of risk management concept, a lot of economics and cybersecurity that are combining, bringing a lot of added value and really great benefits to the end clients.
Wow. Okay. So this is a question that I ask everyone. What is a day like in the life, in your job? Like, what is a day like in the life managing risk? Because I used to work somewhere when I was a dev, and I remember we had this director who did not know anything about risk management, just to be clear. He's like, I'm going to manage that risk. And I'm like, what does that mean, Phil? He's like, I'm going to manage it. And I'm like, we all know that means you're going to do nothing. And he'd be like, I'm managing. I'm like, you're not managing anything. So I have a feeling what you do is very different than what he did.
First of all, Tanya, as I'm leading the cyber advisory, I'm managing different clients. And that means that, of course, my day or every day is different. However, one very important aspect that is continuously part of my professional career is educating the customers. There is a lot of calls, there's a lot of webinars, there's a lot of discussions trying to come back to the basic, to the fundamentals, trying to understand the business. So how does a day look like? Basically, webinars. I can start a day like today with a webinar where I'm trying to discuss a topic to the general or public audience. Then separate client meetings where we discuss, for example, a little bit particularly about their request, about What do they understand with cyber risk assessment? Because very often as well, they don't have an idea. Then delivery, of course, which means not only having a list or an Excel file with a different risk, it's actually meaning interviews with business stakeholders or workshops where you actually collaborate with different business units, different business stakeholders. You bring in, you present, and you ask the right questions to try to understand further the business and then raise your concern in a way that is understood. One very good example in here that is practical and I think is very valid nowadays is that a lot of companies are still messing around the third parties risks when it comes to cybersecurity and the importance of it. So very recently, or in the last few days and weeks, I've been really having a lot of conversations around that. So this is something that is part of me, like of my day. I basically have a meetings as well where not only deliver, but I need to raise the awareness of the clients. I need to educate them, and I need to speak with various stakeholders, and not only cybersecurity, not only IT. And then, of course, internal meetings where we need to ensure that whoever we are working with or I am working with understands the offering, understands what we do when we talk about cyber risk assessment or cyber risk quantification, which is, again, something that is not commonly understood by everyone. So my calendar or my day is full by meetings, from morning, starting with webinars, for example, as I mentioned, client meetings where I'm just starting the journey with them, educating them, with delivery, where as well includes basically discussing with the clients and the business stakeholders, and then even internal discussions with colleagues to make sure that everyone understands what the certain concepts mean and what are we doing. So there is a lot of different angles. It's a lot of different stakeholders involved. That means very long days, very, very long days, and a lot of adaptability. So you can't have the same discussion with different stakeholders. You need to adapt the way of how you bring your message. You need to be very flexible. You need to put yourself in the skin or in the basically life of that person and understand how to approach what they see from their perspective, what is their concern, and how to bring your message in the most efficient or effective manner.
Wow. Usually when we ask people that question, they'll be like, I don't know, lots of meetings. Or they'll be like, I mostly code all day. I've never received such a thorough answer. This is so good. Because a lot of people that watch this podcast or listen to the podcast, it's because they might want to get into this field someday, right? And you just gave a really good description. Okay, I have more questions though. Okay, what types of personality traits or aptitudes do you think would make someone good at risk management? So I feel like it's really obvious you have to be a good communicator or you're not going to do well at this. But what else? What else could make someone be good at this or predisposed to potentially being good at it?
I think, again, is a very, very important question. One aspect that is critical is being able to listen. And listening, of course, is related to communication, but communication is when you speak, you need to be clear, but also you need to listen and understand your clients. And this is really critical. The other aspect as well is being pragmatic and understanding that by being an advisor to clients, you need to be very careful in that sense that you might know your area of expertise, but as a professional, you cannot know or understand everything. So have that, I would say, pragmatism and make sure that you're always careful around what and how you perceive and advise clients on something. And the operational technology is a great example. You cannot go, for example, to an operation manager in a plant and tell them, we need to do an update now. How come you have, legacy systems that are not yet updated? That will not work. You need to actually manage your advice in a proper way that considers the overall risk for that particular plant, for example, understanding why they're concerned with the updates, and then finding a way to do the right thing, making sure that you actually as well help the business operate. And in this particular case, help the plant continue the operations. So I think if I look at the various points, communication, as you mentioned, but being a good listener is extremely critical, and being pragmatic and always having the practical approach. Is not about knowing everything, because no one does, but being that advisor and the good person who is going to recommend the best suitable solution for the clients in alignment with their risk appetite, with their business goals.
A topic that has come up on this podcast over and over and over again is empathy. And I feel like a lot of what you're describing there, like around being able to listen to the client, understand where they're coming from, and then help them like get to a more secure place. I feel like it's you understanding where they're coming from a lot so that you could be good at your job. Do you agree, or?
Yeah, absolutely, Tanya. Again, it's not everyone understands cybersecurity. Not everyone understands the threats and the consequences of a cyber attack. And therefore, if we do not take the time to educate the clients and understand them, we are unable to do or achieve our goal, which is making them further evolving in their cyber resilience journey. And that is something that is really critical for a good advisor. Now, when it comes to empathy, I want to just highlight as well an important point. While it's really important to listen to the clients to understand them, sometimes you will find clients or just business stakeholders who are not ready to listen, who are not ready to actually implement anything, even if you try your best. So know as well your sponsors within the organization that you're trying to advise, and try to find people who are eager to listen and communicate constructively with you, following your recommendations, following your questions. This is very, very important. Another aspect that I use sometimes is, as I speak 5 languages, I try actually to speak with the clients in their own language. I tried to learn Mandarin, that didn't work yet. So I thought I did, I even was so proud that I said, oh, I speak a little bit of Mandarin. And then I didn't practice and I forgot everything. But what I noticed is that if you discuss with the clients in their own language, that as well helps a lot, because of course it's easier for people to communicate in their own mother tongue.
Do you speak French? I speak French.
Of course, je parle français, bien sûr.
Oh, mon Dieu! That's awesome! Oh my gosh, more ways I could talk to Magda. Yes.
I spent 7 years in Paris, Tanya, so, I didn't have much choice aside from speaking the French language very well.
I spent 2 weeks in Paris, and I have to say it was a delicious experience, to say the least. So let's say someone wants to work in risk management. How could they get into such a field? Because if you want to be an accountant, you study finance in university, and then you do, like accounting school, and you graduate, and then you're an accountant, and you can go out and account. But like, if you want to learn cyber risk and you want to get a job in that someday, do you have any thoughts on like maybe different job experience someone should try to get? Or maybe I am unaware that you can go to school for that. Like, what can people do?
There are certifications that help, but let me take a step back. I think what is the most important, if you want to be really a great cyber risk advisor in general, is to have the understanding of the business, which means please take the time to go and have a 1 day or a few days of a life of a business owner. Why? Because that will give a very big different perspective towards cyber risk and what is actually the priority for a business owner. It will help you to understand that while actually cyber risk might be for you perceived from a one angle, it is also important to understand that there are different priorities for someone in business.
Okay. Okay. What about so I don't like to advertise certifications or anything. Like I don't try to like push people towards that because it's an industry in itself. Like I was explaining to my significant other who said, "Wait, so you have to pay to take a test again?" And I said, "Yes, and you have to recertify and pay again. And then you have to get these CPEs." So then my sweetheart was looking it up. But you have to do live training to do the CPEs. So like you can't go to meetups or you can't do this or that and get CPEs. I'm like, well, yes, because then they make more money off you when they buy more training from you. And my sweetheart was like, "What? This is a racket." And and so I and then We Hack Purple has a certification, but you don't have to pay to take it. You get it when you finish all of the courses in the entire program and you've passed all the tests, and then you get it. There's not like an extra fee. And so we have like a different approach on that. And so I try really hard not to push certifications on people. But that said, what are some of the risk management courses or certifications that exist? Or just name ones that you like and just forget to name the ones you don't like.
Well, I would say, Tanya, I have a similar view. I don't have a lot of certifications. First of all, because obviously certification means cost, like you said. And when I was on, since my professional journey, I focused on gaining practical experience rather than spending my time in books and passing the exams, because I felt it was much more relevant for my job and what the customers were expecting. So I will not, just mention one certification in particular, but the certifications that I have, for example, help me as well to see from a management perspective and certain different aspects and areas, but as well to understand some really good processes and fundamentals. Now, if I look at the learning that I had from the books, from what I have learned in the exams, from what I read online in certain courses around risk management.
Mm-hmm.
There is no one that will help you, in my view, achieving the best outcome. I think the best way to become someone who's good at that, try to read and take different courses from different perspectives. So you will be able to see how much even cyber risk assessment as a term, cyber risk quantification as a term might differ from one course to another. They are not completely standardized terms. There's different research again, there's different approaches. So I would say take the opportunity to read about that, take the opportunity to take different courses from different providers and see how, for example, and this is as well something that's very interesting, uh, some frameworks will call cyber risk quantification when they use, and I mentioned that, the single loss expectancy, the annualized rates of occurrence, and this kind of terms and concepts. But for me, that is semi-quantitative because it doesn't look at the business holistically. And coming back to my points before, in my view, and this is an opinion again, the best if it is when you combine cybersecurity and economics. Now, is there a course like that there out? I haven't seen anything that is as holistic as I would like. Perhaps I missed it, but I would say, again, focus on different courses and ensure that you actually as well understand that the best and optimal way is to combine economics and cybersecurity in order to be as good as possible in cyber risk management.
Okay. So we started a little late. So I'm going to ask a double question and then another question, and then we're going to wrap up because I just want to keep you on the phone all night, but that apparently I've been told is not supposed to happen. So super tough question. What do you like best and what do you like least about what you do? Like about risk management. So it's a hard question. And I don't mean like what do you like least as in there's this guy named Jerry and he's the worst.
when we look at a job, and this question makes me think about something that was really, really fascinating for me. I was on a webinar with more than 1,000 people, and I said, I'm passionate about what I'm doing. I love it. It makes me happy. And then there was a question from the audience. What if the job that we are doing is not making us happy every day? I'm like, when you work in a job, you cannot be happy every single second. There are tasks that are the routine tasks, administrative tasks. There are tasks that do not actually align with your passion, maybe, but that's part of your job. So if I look at what I really like the most, I really like the most advising clients, talking with people about their cyber risk, even building those scenarios around cyber risk, because I need so much to understand those different businesses, the different clients, how they operate, their revenue, their structures, their organization. So it's absolutely fascinating. What I like the least is probably everything that relates to some administrative tasks that I need to do just because it needs to be done, and I think a lot of members or a lot of people in the audience will relate to that, it's like filling a lot of papers that you just need to answer forms. It's not something that I think anyone would enjoy, right? Perhaps, I don't know. I think so.
Yes, there are always parts of every job we don't like. Like, I recorded an audiobook last week, and I have to tell you, I did not like that. I did not like it at all. And then, I think I'm good at talking. I think I'm good at reading. Nope, turns out that's not true. It's like, I have never made so many mistakes in my whole life. But I'm so excited I'm going to have an audiobook. And so you do those parts that are really hard so that you can get the good thing. Yeah.
Talking about audiobooks, Tanya, I have actually, I'm super excited because I'm now in the midst of having 2 books ready. So one is about cyber risk in general for stakeholders, and I will not go into details, suspense. And the second one is actually a book that isn't yet finalized, but I started it already, and it's a little bit different. It brings cybersecurity, a little bit further from as well some more interesting aspects that are not only about corporate, not only about business, but it's basically like a story. So I'm super excited about those 2, and I'm looking forward to publish them and share them with everyone.
That is amazing. I had no idea that you were writing a book. Not only one book, but you're like, oh, whatever, I'll just write 2. Writing a book's really hard, Magda.
It is. It is. And very time consuming.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Actually, honestly, I found the writing of the book part really good, but all the technical edits and grammatical edits, I was just like, it took, I swear, 2/3 of the time was all of the edits. It's hard, and I like to think I have really good grammar, but no. And apparently, I use a semicolon in a way where you should have a colon and vice versa, and I felt very confident in my punctuation before I wrote the book.
Exactly. There are things that you don't see at all when you write a book, and it's fascinating how many mistakes you find out after it's proofread. And I mean, I had friends helping me to read the book, and proofread it, and I had as well professionals to do that. So it's absolutely a challenging task and requires a lot of time again.
Oh yeah. So we met because you do awesome work that I admire. And so you've done lots of work with women and girls to get them into cybersecurity, like the first CTF for girls in Singapore, and the second one, the third one, the fourth one, etc. Do you want to tell us a little bit about so basically, long story short, I just saw cool stuff that this lady was doing on Twitter, and I was like, wow, she's awesome. I'm going to follow her. And then I started messaging her, and she totally tolerated me. And then eventually I was going to Singapore for work, and I was like, oh my God, could we meet in person? And she said yes. And so could you tell them a little bit about it?
Yeah, Tanya, this is really a topic that is very, very important for me. So when we look at the first CTF for girls, which basically was the catch the flag competition, it was really fantastic. We had literally young girls like 15, 18 participating and having, prizes and winning, and it was really, really awesome. So I think in terms of impact, what I really thrive of, and I just realized I'm repeating the word really very often, but whatever, but it's what is really interesting is that, and what I'm passionate about is to giving them this opportunity. When you take, for example, a girl that is 15 or 18, they not only need to be supported to in terms of, have, for example, study group, but also to have the possibility and the confidence that they can do that. So I have just launched a scholarship in Singapore where we offer literally a certain hacking certification for the girls, and we have 10 courses and 10 certifications that we will sponsor and basically support those girls for, and with the study group, so they don't give up. It's not that easy, so they need that support as well, around making it a success. So this is something that I'm absolutely looking forward, and with the support of the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, I'm super excited and really happy about it. And I hope I'm gonna, see a lot of hackers there, more and more, like girls hacking all the way, like in Singapore, everywhere.
Oh my gosh, Magda Chelly. Thank you so much for being on the We Hack Purple podcast. I know that you have a hard stop and I've gone way past the time I was supposed to. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. And quite frankly, thank you all the things you're doing for girls, because I want to be old and gray and know there's lots of women in our field to take over from you and I someday.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for the invitation. It was really a pleasure. I was very, very happy to have this chat with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Singapore.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I hope so. Oh yeah, yep. And thank you so much to our amazing guest this week, Magda Chelly, who, well, I mean, I feel like 1 hour just wasn't enough. I would have talked to her all night. Thank you again to ThreadFix, our amazing sponsor. Thank you to my amazing sound engineer who makes us look and sound amazing on this podcast. Thank you to you for attending. Thank you for listening. Thank you for checking out our academy, our community, all the things we do. Our secure coding course is coming out in 2 or 3 weeks, depending upon how Tanya does on finishing the final exercises and assuming we pass our QA. We are so excited to have you, our listener, support us and just come back week after week. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm Tanya Janca, and our guest this week was Magda Chelly, and that was the We Hack Purple podcast.